Sveino, g'day mate, how are ya?
Hey, buddy. Wow. Been a while, eh? Jeez, is this how we got to do it? We have to have a friggin' podcast if we're ever going to talk to each other?
Seems that way.
Jeez. Well, I'll take it. If that's what we got to do, then so be it.
It is funny though, like we made it happen today. Both of us have got a bit of stuff going on, and weirdly, you sort of, if it was a phone call, it wouldn't have had as much pressure. You'd get to it. And why is that? Why do we put work in front of I guess friendship?
I just think like I think this happens, like especially when you have family and then you have work things and you're far removed. Like we can't just go meet up in town and grab a beer and shoot the shit. And it feels weird like on the phone, Not that it is weird, but it's just not the same. And so it's like I sometimes wonder, like these conversations we get to have, I think that's why we enjoy them so much, is that, we are talking maybe about things that we wouldn't say if we were just calling each other, but we delve into ideas and things that we enjoyed kind of discussing and talking about back in the day, and I think that's a really solid part of our friendship. So, it's like, yeah, unfortunately, sometimes the podcast is kind of the best way to catch up, if that makes sense.
Well, it is. It's not too far off the way we speak to each other, really. The only difference is we sort of have some topics we want to cover, and the rest of it for everyone out there is like sitting on the couch with you and I. Exciting or not exciting, you guys make your judgment. But I guess we should welcome everyone. Welcome to the new season of the Life in the Peloton Chronicles with Svein, Tuft and I. Last year, if we've got new members, welcome. This is your first episode of the year. Last year, we started off, we cranked through some great topics. We started off with how to go pro, really, this time last year, and it was interesting being there at Tour Down Under and talking to some riders, and we went back and talked to different people, guys who didn't quite make it, directors talking about what they're looking for, and, these scouts and things like that. And throughout the year, we covered other stuff. We talked about saunas, was being a really popular episode, actually. I certainly loved doing that topic. And just recently, I ran into somebody who said to me, "Oh, Mitch, I'm getting a sauna from that episode." That's the third person that said that to me, which is awesome. Really cool. Now, I'm the only one who hasn't actually saddled up and done that, so I feel a little bit guilty.
You were talking pretty big back in that episode. And I thought like within the next week, you're going to have foundation poured at least. Hey?
I know. Wow. Yeah. No, it just hasn't happened yet. Yeah. Busy guy. So yeah, look, we did that, and we did some stuff about grand tours and classics, and we finished the year with the topic that pretty much started our ideas around the podcast was retirement and discussing that. And I'm sure it'll come back in and out. It's something we're always talking about because it's an ever evolving sort of idea. I'm 3 years out of it. Svein, what are you, 5 years out of the sport or 4?
2019. Yeah. It's going to be like, 5, 6 this year. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always changing, and so everyone I speak to, whether they're just retired or, been retired for a longer time, we're all with different stages of our retirement. I love that word, retirement. Moving on from racing professionally. Actually, I had someone the other day when I was at the Tour Down Under, as a young kid, and no offense to him, but he just said to me, "So, what are you doing now? Like, do you need to work anymore since you're retired or what?" And I was just thinking, mentally, I need to work, but too, like, I don't know what kind of rider he thought I was or what riders get paid.
I think they just think like if you made it there, you're set for life, millions of euros just rolling in every year, just living it up.
Well,
where I thought you were going to go is when, and again, no offense to anyone that says this, but like young guys who maybe did like a few years and then they said they retired, like as like an amateur level or like even like a continental level, and they said they retired from their career, and it's like, well, I always have a bit of problem with that, because it's like, I guess I sound like a jerk, but like you kind of have to have like to go through the whole thing, in order to call it a career, right?
Is it sort of like retiring from university before you sort of, get your degree and become
Yeah,
a
would you call that
professional.
retiring? Like, no, you wouldn't. Like, you were still working at trying to figure it out. And then you're just like, nah, this isn't for me. That's fair. But it's not retiring. It's not like it just like you just, you just do this thing for fun, because basically otherwise you'd just be free rolling around, just spending cash, building saunas left, right, and center.
Well, let's sort of, just before we get into it, I guess let's catch up. It's been a couple of months since we've
Yeah.
spoken. October was our last episode, and for me, it was really necessary to have that break. As every year, I like keeping it pretty rigid with the podcast about sticking around the World Tour season, but there's something at the end of the year that I need to sort of disconnect firstly for about, a few weeks, and then reconnect and build up and get my head around where I want to go in the coming year, whether that's to do with the podcast or whether that's to do with life, and just need to have that time. But things have been sort of cranking up always as the year starts. It's always way busier than I anticipate. I'm ready. I'm sort of ready to take it on.
I'm sure, I'd imagine you do this as well. Is like in the low times, you're making the plans for the year, and it all sounds great, right? Like putting all these pieces together, and you're like, oh yeah, that sounds about right. And then when the actual time comes, and you're realizing, oh, that wasn't a good idea to place this in there. Like the reality of it is just not really feasible or enjoyable as you might have thought when nothing was happening, like in your time off, right?
The problem is I'm still jigsawing my life a little bit like when I was pro. Like, oh yeah, cool, I've got that little week there. I can probably squeeze 2 things in that week, and then there's a half a day there. I'll put a little Jenga, a little block of something in there, and I'm like, when you get to it, you're like, I've only left myself about 5 minutes worth of breathing space here.
Yeah. I don't think the rest of the world works like that. Like the way we were able to juggle things is because we had so many other people doing logistics and balancing out the rest of it, right? So we just kind of go here and train, and someone had the food taken care of and the travel, and like you're doing all of that stuff, and there actually is no time. Like each one of these things is far bigger. And that's what I noticed like last summer, just doing a few little things, like the other logistics of just moving around with your family and making sure everyone's fed and all this other stuff. It's like really adds a lot to anything that you do.
Well, it's winter time over there, and I was just saying, just before we got on, you're looking lean. You're looking very lean.
Well, to tell you the truth, maybe I look that way, but I'm actually 8 kilos heavier than I was in June. So, but to add to that, it's because I haven't really changed anything. Like I would say my workload is maybe a little less. I'm ski touring a ton, cross country skiing a ton. Maybe I eat a bit more. That could be the case. But also I do a lot more weightlifting this time of year. So the body changes in the winter. And I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but like this is just something I notice in life, like long light cycles of summer, the body kind of strips itself. And then here in the winter, I mean, this morning I was ski touring, it was like minus 15 to start out with. So your body, like, I find that weight, like mass, kind of makes you more durable in the cold. And that's pretty important when you're out all day in that kind of temperature, moving. And it's so different than, where you are, where it's like, well, actually, I don't know. Melbourne seems kind of all over the shop. Could be 20, could be 40, could be 10. You have a wide range of temperatures. But I always think that's like of how crazy that is when we do talk or even just catch up, like messaging, like our days must be so different in that sense. Like, things are changing now because our days are starting to lengthen by quite a bit each day. So it's quite noticeable. But there's a period there in December close to like the winter solstice where it's downright depressing here. Like this, not that we're so far north, but it's enough where, the sun's going down at 3 and it's like, especially because we're surrounded by mountains. So we don't get those like long extended sunsets or what have you, right? Like we have, like, as you can tell, we're in a sunny zone, but we have like 2 ranges on either side of us. So the sun to the south here, and it stays in the valley, but as soon as it goes behind the mountain, that's it for the day, So anyways, the point being is it can be pretty depressing. And if you don't have like outside activities to get you outside in that proper light, I think it's like why a lot of people struggle in these northern hemispheres, you know. And I don't know how it is in Oz for that, because I think you guys have fairly like wet winters there too in Melbourne. And I feel like, a lot of like mental health is really linked to sunlight, I feel. And anyways, that's just a whole other side spiel, but I think it's so important to get out and move when it's kind of crappy like that, you know?
It's interesting because I remember you always saying to me and to Durbo when we'd have our conversations that, you know, as Australians, we were sort of always living, you know, the long summers. You know, we'd do the whole European summer. We'd touch on a little bit of autumn at the end of the year, and then we come straight back into summer. We'd come back in, you know, November or late November and get the whole of summer.
Keeping the throttle twisted is what I would call that.
Well, initially you live in the dream.
Yeah.
And then later on, when you do it for 10 years or so, you're like, something's not quite right here. And it was when you pointed it out. It was like, I think we did the COVID winter, was the first winter I did in Europe. And that reset and that chance, it's actually, yes, I'm agreeing with you with the light, but I think the thing I noticed with when we come back here, it's the Christmas period too. So you just sort of, you come off a season when you need to actually slow down and relax and not do that much. And you come back and you're like, flame on, go catch up with friends. You know, you're starting your pre-season. So you're doing training in the morning and then you're going to see friends in the afternoon. And that's important psychologically. But, you know, what's happening when you're just burning the candle like that for years and years on end?
Well, that's the amazing thing is the body is designed, like I said, you kind of pump out more energy in those long light cycles. So when you shift the hemisphere and you're back in those long summer days, you can do it. But just like you said, you like at some point, I don't think there's like a huge detrimental price, but I think you just need to be respectful of those things. And that's what I would suggest to anyone. And you guys, you're special from Oz because I noticed like you guys could always handled it quite well. But I'm sure like when, like you said, when you were able to check out of that and change the pattern, you would notice it quite a bit. And I always think like, it's just like, I feel like maybe I've said this before, but like humans kind of are like a field, right? Like you can't just keep trying to grow in a field like over and over again, stressing the soil and all that stuff, right? You need like, they call it a field going fallow, right? Like where you let it rest and kind of crop dies and like nutrients come back into the soil, right? And it's like, I feel like humans are kind of like that because we are very seasonal. And I felt like, you know, as a bike racer, and maybe it was just mental, but you know, when you'd be racing in August, September, mostly September, right? Like the sun is going further down, right? On the horizon. So it's a different light. It's an autumn light.
It's a beautiful light.
It's beautiful, yeah. But it's different, right? And then the crops are kind of, they're drying up and becoming barren. Like they're kind of ending for the season and you'd be racing. And it's just like, that's how I felt as a human. You had the season starting in February, January, depending on where you started up, right? And you've just been pinning it for all those months. And I think that what blows me away now is just watching like the performances of guys. Like, you know, you talk to the guys down in Tour Down Under, and this is like, it's never been like an easy race or something, but I think sometimes guys would go there and kind of use it as like the first kind of easy, they would train and then they would like not be super fit for that race and they could get through it. I don't think that's the case now, right? And I feel like every race is like that going right into November almost. And so it's just like that season keeps pushing out, but also the level and the expectation of each race. And that's nothing new, but I feel like it's like at an all-time high right now, just listening to some of the guys you talk to at Tour Down Under.
Very much so. And it's really interesting. That's sort of what we're going to focus on today in the episode is that I was down there at Tour Down Under, and something that we've been discussing off air, you know, in the last sort of month or so, is that it's interesting the way guys start the year now. And are they still feeling those same pressures, or what pressures are they feeling? More pressure potentially. What is the mindset inside the pro cyclist mind at the start of the year now? You know, understanding about the race program, you know, how important it is to start the year well. So I went away and spoke to a few riders at the start there. Well, that's the Life in the Peloton Chronicles. A little snippet for you guys who aren't a part of the Peloton and want to know what it's all about. Get across, join the Pelo to hear more of Sveino and I chewing the fat, talking about all the different topics that we discuss in this series, which is really fun, a long format discussion. This episode was a great episode to kick the year off where we unpack what it's like starting the season as a pro, what it was like starting back when we were getting your race program, those nerves around it, and then what it's like today, because it's a hell of a lot more nerve-wracking going to races these days. We unpack a lot more in this series. Plus, we've got all those episodes from last year, plus lots more for the Pelo members. Guys, get across to lifeinthepeloton.com, sign yourself up to the Pelo, and sit back and enjoy the ride.